What's up everyone, John here from BIM, and today we're diving into some Excel formulas and strategies for extracting line items out of our data set. This is a workflow I use all the time, and you can too if you want to create meaningful line items based off your building information modeling data or any other type of data structure that you want to summarize into line items. So we're going to be exploring some different formulas today that's all about summing information. We'll start simple with SUMIF and SUMIFS, then we'll get a little more advanced with SUMPRODUCT, and we'll start introducing some other functions such as search and ISNUMBER, and then we'll get into some index matches as well, which will help make our summing more dynamic and allow us to return values from different columns based on what our units of measurement input may be. So let's start this off simple, and we're going to be building this up as we get further into our exercises here. And before we get started, if you want to download this summary sheet, then you can head over to our blog and download this for free and play around with it. By the time we get to the end of this video, then you will really understand how all of these different summing strategies work. And then we'll also show you a bonus at the very end of this video that will take our data set here, we'll turn it into a table, which will make our formulas much more powerful, easier to read, and then easier to manage as our data set may expand and contract over the process of developing and building our models. Okay, let's go ahead and get started here with a simple sample. I'm just going to go through here and let's just clear out all of these formulas, and we're going to just go through. We'll take our time, we'll build this up, and we'll talk about the different building blocks as we go. So number one here, we are going to sum based on a matching reference cell. Now our matching reference cell will be the C5 column over here, but if we just start typing in SUMIF and we hit tab, then it'll jump us and give us a little bit of a preview of what we need to do next. So our range here is going to be our column K, so we're just going to pick up all of these cells. Now it's good practice here if you are planning on copying formulas around vertically or horizontally to freeze them using the dollar symbol. So we'll try to enter some good practices as we go. So our criteria here is just going to be our matching cell, and then our sum range is going to be, we'll just start out with total cost for all of these. So let's go ahead, we're going to freeze these and let's see what we get. So cool, we have 120,000 here, so that means there's 12 of these. Let's just switch this and see, okay, there's 16 of these others, so does that check out? Yes, it does, as we just do some quick highlights here and check our total at the bottom. So okay, that's pretty simple. That's our first task, is just a sum based on a single criteria. Next up, let's say we have two criteria that we want to work with. So for this, we can use a different formula. That's a simple one. It's just SUMIFS. This time we're starting with our sum range. So let's just start with our range over here, and let's freeze these as well. And then our criteria range 1 is going to be our phase, or this column K. So let's just pick this up and we'll freeze those rows, and then our criteria. And then we'll do the same thing for 2, which is going to be our code here. We'll pick this up, and then our criteria 2. So cool, let's see if this is working. Okay, so we have something going on here. What happened? Well, I think I missed the placement on that symbol, so let's just make sure that it's in the right position. Okay, so there we have it. One thing to note here, as you see this over on this side, this is a data validation cell. So you can set these up by going up to the top under data and then click on data validation, and then all you need to do is set this as a list, and you'd select the source, and then that's a nice way of listing what's in that entire column. So it's just breaking it down, and we can see here there's only 5 different versions of those codes to work with, but it makes the selection of this very, very easy. Okay, cool. So that is our second. That was a sum based on 2 matching reference cells. Before we jump into this next exercise, I wanted to let you know that we're producing a brand new quantity and cost estimating course called The Bridge. This training program will teach you how to set up ArchiCAD models for fast and accurate takeoffs from zones, elements, materials, and surfaces. And then we'll teach you how to connect them into Excel to build full analysis workbooks. So if you like the subject we're covering in today's video, then awesome, and be sure to check out the links in the description to learn more. Back to the video. Now this next one, what if we want to do a manually typed in search of a partial value here? Well, we can do that, and we can do this with a SUMIF formula. And in this case, it's going to be essentially the same thing that we had before. Let's search in our code this time. So we're going to pick up our range. I'm going to be careful about how I enter those dollar symbols. And then our criteria here, we're going to do this in parentheses. If we want to make this a wildcard search, meaning it's going to be a partial match, then we need to put this inside a star symbol. And let's just type in 0331 star parentheses, and let's get our sum range, and we will freeze this. And let's see if we're working. Okay, cool. So that seems to be working there. We can change our values and get a little more detailed there if we want, or change this last value, and I can see that that is working just fine. So cool. That was SUMIF, SUMIFS, and SUMIF using a wildcard search. Now those are three pretty commonly used applications of going in and extracting out of a data set some simple sums based on a formula. So for this next one, what if we wanted to do a partial match similar to what we did in this previous one, but using a cell reference instead? Well, this is where our SUMIFs start to break down, and they don't have the functions there to find a partial match from a reference cell. So this is where we need to introduce a SUMPRODUCT combined with a search function and a ISNUMBER. So let's go ahead and we're going to start building up this next formula using SUMPRODUCT. All right, so let's just start this out with a SUMPRODUCT. We'll hit tab to get this going. Now, when we're using a ISNUMBER and a search here, and when we're working with SUMPRODUCTs in general, you can see here that we have different arrays. The way that SUMPRODUCT works is it takes an array and multiplies it against the next array and the next array from each row in our data set. Then it adds each row together. That's how a SUMPRODUCT is built. So for this first one, which is going to be our criteria, we need to add a little bit extra syntax here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add the two little dashes here. Then we can start typing an ISNUMBER, and then we are going to do a search. And our search here is we're going to find our text from our reference cell within the text. In this case, we're going to be using our name column, and we're going to go ahead and freeze this. And then we need to wrap this in double parentheses, and then we're moving on to array 2. So what this formatting does here in this first one, which is going to be our criteria, is at the end of the day, we want this criteria to equal 1 if it's a matching condition. Now, by searching for this, if it's found, then we want to convert that to a true and false. That's what this ISNUMBER is. And then these two little dashes here converts a true false to a 1 and a 0. By adding up this section here, this ISNUMBER with search and these two dashes, it's going to return a 1 when our search is found. And so that's what we want when we have a positive criteria that's been met, because a 1 multiplied by our next array is just going to equal that next array. Alternatively, if it's not found, then we want it to return a 0, which is false, meaning that we zero out that row and not add it to the total. So that's how these SUMPRODUCTs are going to be working, which is a powerful way of just adding criteria and returning a 1 or a 0 depending on if that criteria is met. So our array 2 is simply just going to be our total cost in column in this case. And so let's go ahead and add in some dollar symbols to kind of set that. And okay, so are we working? Let's go ahead and just double check this. We'll change these values, and yes, we are. So cool. That is a SUMPRODUCT with ISNUMBER and search as part of our first array, which is our criteria array. Okay, now once we have that building block set up and we understand how that's functioning, then we can take this and we can do several different variations with it. All right, our next task here is going to be very similar to the previous one. We're just going to add in one more array in this case, and we'll add a 1 matching criteria. So we can actually just take this previous formula. I'm going to copy it down, and we can see here that it's still referencing all the same cells. What we want to do though is we want to introduce another array here. So let's do this right on the front end, and so I'm going to put in a comma, and so that makes this array 2, and so we're just going to add in a new array here. So let's just do the double dash because we do want this to be a 1 or a 0 criteria, and then let's go ahead and we are just going to make this cell equal our phase range, and we'll freeze this in case we want to copy it around later, and then 1 parentheses here. That concludes pretty much everything we need to do to add this in. So all we're doing is we're looking for B13 within there. If it's returned, then it will be a 1. If it's not, then it's a 0, and it's going to blank out the entire row. So let's see if that's going to function. So we can play around with this and just does work, seem like it's working. So awesome. So that was a sum based on 1 matching and 1 partial. Now we can do another similar variation of this, and this time we'll just be doing 2 searches using the wildcard, similar to what we did up here in task 3. And let's just copy this down, and instead of using reference cells here, and in fact I'm going to just kind of clear this first version, and I'm going to copy, well, for this next one, we'll just modify this and then we'll copy. If we want to be using a wildcard search, meaning that we're manually typing our search into the formula here, what we need to do is put this in parentheses. So in this case, we'll look for BV01 within our column M, and then we're going to take this entire thing, we're going to copy, and I'm going to paste this in front, add a comma, and then we are going to search for, let's search for a partial code in L. So let's look for 0421 within this entire column L, and that is working for us here. All it's doing is searching for this term and this term. Now, when these start to get a little bit longer in terms of formulas, there's a trick that we can do here that makes it a little bit easier to read, and that's by holding down Alt and Enter. And we can actually take each of these different arrays and just place them on their own row. And by doing so, it just makes it a little bit easier to read here. You do have to extend your formula bar here, so if you can't see those other lines, you can grab this little break here in the middle and stretch that out, and it becomes a little bit easier to read, especially if you have several of these that are stacked up on top of each other. Okay, cool. So that is a sum based on 2 wildcard searches and no reference cells, as we can see here. So now we're going to transition to what's considered maybe a little bit more advanced here. And in this next scenario, instead of just pointing to the same column that we have been up until now, which is this column R, often when we're bringing in BIM data sets into Excel and we want to extract out formulas or totals, often we have different quantity units of measurement that we may want to extract for different purposes. It could be counts, it could be area in square feet or square meters, or lengths in linear feet or linear meters, or volumes or weights, or whatever it may be, any sort of unit of measurement. We can extract these out based on a dynamic input. So that's what we're going to work through here in this next formula. We're going to introduce a dynamic input criteria, which is going to return the column that we are looking for. Okay, so we are going to start this off with a matching reference cell. So we'll be using this as our matching reference. So let's go ahead and take care of that first off. So we'll do our sum product. We will add our double dash because we want this to be in a 1 or a 0 format. And then of course we want to make this equals our reference cell. So let's pick up our range, and that's the same building block that we've been working with before. Now, this next one, our array 2, is really going to be our summing column, and we want to make this dynamic, meaning it's going to move based on this input here. So we start this off with an index, and what we are going to be indexing here is our entire table. So we're going to select the entire thing. I'm going to freeze our cells here. Our row number, we're just going to enter 1 for this, comma, and then our column number is going to be our match portion of this. So we are going to type in match, and then our lookup value is going to be our inputted lookup cell there, and then our lookup array is going to be our headers up top. So let's go ahead and we can freeze all of these as well. We can actually freeze this entire thing, and then our match type there is going to be 0, and there we have it. 3 parentheses at the end should do it. So now when we change this input from, call it quantity or length, let's go ahead and let's actually set this to a data validation. We'll make this a list, and we'll do a source really for these here, so we can do anything within there. And let's hit OK. And so now when we come over here, we can change these and adjust this depending on what we want to return. So this is very, very powerful, very useful when we want to create line items that may be referencing one unit of measurement or another. And this gives us the option to make it dynamic to pull any of those versions depending on what we have here. So based on this formula, we can really start introducing and building back some of those other options that we had here, which we can simply just do by copying. So let's copy this down, and I'm going to just check all of our ranges here. Everything there seems like it's working, so that is good. Let's just change this to match to make sure that we are good. And let's introduce back one more of these reference cells. So all we're going to do here is we're just going to copy this. We're going to add another array here, and then we can just simply adjust this first one. So let's make this first one, instead of C, we're going to make this B19, and then let's go back to our column K for our phase. So all we're doing here is just kind of filtering this down, and we can switch this and see that we're segregating things out by phase now. So awesome. So we have come pretty far now. We've completed 8 of these different tasks. What I would like to do now is, for these last 2 formulas, we are going to first take this entire workbook here, and we're going to copy it over, and I'm just going to rename this, and this is going to be table. So we are going to change this entire table over now from just simple referenced cells and ranges as we've done before. And for these last 2, we're going to make some variations, but do so by using this in a table format instead. So number 1, I'm just going to select this entire table, and then we are going to go up to our insert, and we are going to add a table here. And we want to just note here that since we have selected our headers here, we want to say my table has headers. And once we've done that, you can see that instantly it's been switched over to a different format. And because this is a table, we can quickly just go through and select the formatting that we want here. Another very, very important aspect of this that we want to consider is our table name. So in this case, I'm just going to call this BIM Data, or BIM. We'll just call this BIM for right now. So this is going to be referencing our BIM table. So cool. Now that we've done that here, when we actually go to build up our formulas here, we can do it in a very similar manner, but you're going to see how much easier these formulas are to read than what they were before. So we're going to take this, we're going to copy this down, and all we need to do here is just make some modifications here. So I can actually see that we, in our previous version here, we haven't used any of these partial matching here. So let's go ahead and we're going to modify these. We're going to make this first one is number, and we are going to search, and we are searching for C21 within that range of L. So actually in this case, we're looking within range of M. So, but at this point in time, instead of actually using this range of M, because you can see I'm even getting confused here as I'm looking for which column is which, let's go ahead and we're going to reestablish what column we're looking for. So again, we're looking for our BV02, which is just a code embedded in our name. And so let's go ahead and we're going to pick up this entire row here and see what happens in our formula. Instead of referencing the cells, what's happening now is we are referencing our table and our name. And what's really powerful about this is if we clear this out, it's going to give us a list of all of our different columns here. So we can just simply go through and double click that and make that the BIM name. So we can copy this, and we can essentially, let's copy this entire thing, because in this case we're looking for 2 partial matches, and I'm going to paste this into our second array here. And our search term now, instead of C21, we are going to go to B21, and instead of our name, we're going to be looking within our code, and you can start typing in here and you can see that code pops up immediately and selects that. So this is where having a table in our formulas makes it much easier to see what's going on and to read what's going on. So for this next one, our entire index here for our range, let's go ahead and pick up the entire thing and see what it says. So here we can see it's picking up the entire thing. Our match in this case, let's pick up our headers and see what it's going to return. So it's returning BIM headers. So as you read through this, this formula starts to look much more easily recognizable, especially knowing that we have a table here. And so this is really useful because when you have multiple tables in, okay, we have too many arguments. Let's see. So where did we go wrong? I think what we did is, I think we're missing a parentheses here. So let's add a parentheses and add a parentheses, and I think that is our issue. Okay, so now that is working. So now instead of referencing the cells, we're referencing the table instead. And as we're reading through this here, let's just kind of separate these out onto different sheets or on different rows. Then it becomes much easier to see what's going on, and we can read through what table these are coming from. So this is even more useful when we have tables on different sheets within a workbook. So if we have multiple sheets with multiple tables, then we don't even need to jump around to those different sheets and references. We can instead just reference our table name instead, and then we can go search within here, and it makes it much easier to work with and to know where that information is coming from. So okay, we only have one more task here to complete at the end. This is going to be a sum based on 2 wildcard inputs with dynamic columns. So this is really going to be essentially the same formula that we had before. I'm going to copy this down, and instead of having these being searches, I can see that right now, because there's no criteria here, it's not getting limited down at all. But instead of doing that, we're going to come in here and manually enter our criteria. So for our name, let's go search for anything that's concrete within our BIM name. And then in our code, let's search for anything that is 033110. So concrete, and we're going to dial in here to our footings once again. So based on that, we can see our return value there, and we can adjust this as well. So let's just, we're going to take this, copy it down to make this dynamic, so we can go through and just simply pull things out based on that input here. So, so awesome. So that is 10 different tasks that we've gone through and broken things down to build up our formula, starting with a simple SUMIF and really concluding with a SUMPRODUCT with ISNUMBER and an index match all combined together. And these are some of the most commonly used criteria that I set up for my own workflows. And so hopefully as we've gone through this, you understand these different building blocks and pieces. Again, you can go download this sample sheet from our blog and play around with this on your own. And we also have a full-blown training course coming up that we're calling The Bridge, which is really going to go into a much greater level of detail of how to set up your building information models. In this case, we'll be using ArchiCAD as our modeling tool of choice, and we're going to be talking through the workflow of extracting quantities from ArchiCAD and then building up an entire workbook that's going to reference tables and this type of analysis to build up quantity takeoffs and cost line items. So if this is stuff that you're interested in, then definitely check out that training program. Head over to contrabim.com to learn more about that. But that's it here for today. We've done quite a bit here in building up our 10 different formulas, and this is really going to be a nice introduction into what we'll do in that deeper training program. So if that's your type of thing, then I hope you join us. So that's it here for today. We'll wrap this one up, and we'll see you on another video very soon. Thanks for checking it out.